weather pattern that we found ourselves in since the start of the year. Low pressure sitting once again to the southwest, sending wet and windy weather through. The initial band of rain that we've seen in the southwest earlier in the day, all that fizzles away to showery rain across central parts overnight. Drier towards eastern England, northwest Scotland, in between further spells of rain. Extensive low clouds, mist and fog in places as we begin on Tuesday, but actually frost-free. A relatively mild start to the day, if rather gloomy. Now, at first, there will be some dry weather, even some brightness towards central southern England and the southwest. But that's only ahead of the next weather front that's moving in by this stage across western parts of Cornwall. Showery rain ahead of that across much of England and Wales. More persistent damp weather, eastern parts of Northern Ireland into central and southern Scotland. And this wet weather across eastern Scotland, well, it's going to be remaining in place throughout Tuesday, Wednesday, and indeed the first part of Thursday. So rain warning enforced for eastern Scotland. That rain adding to what has already been a very wet few weeks across the east of Scotland. Snow on the highest peaks, but rain at most other levels and elsewhere across the UK. Further cloud and spells of rain. One band of rain swiftly moves through, followed by some lively showers into the southwest. Wednesday's a right dog's dinner, a lot of cloud cover across the UK. Spells of rain in many places, particularly northern areas, and the snow on the highest peaks begins to lower, so above 300 or 400 metres we'll see snow across eastern Scotland. And that's the mark of things to come, with the weather turning colder on Thursday and Friday.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Thank you, Britain, for making GB News Radio such a huge success. Whether you're in the car, on the go, or listening at home, thank you for choosing us as your radio station.
Good evening, this is the latest AI travel news from GBnews.com. On the A92 northbound, lane 1 is shut due to flooding. In Leeds, the A1M southbound between junction 45 and junction 44 has a broken down vehicle, with 2 lanes closed and delays of around 1.5 hours. In West Sussex, the A27 westbound near Chichester is slow between the A285 and the A259. And on the trains, Great Western Railway and South Western Railway report major disruption between Fareham and Portsmouth Harbour, also affecting services towards Havant. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
We want you to boost your bank account with an incredible £30,000 in tax-free cash to spend however you like. There's also a terrific £10,000 to spend on a Riviera travel holiday of a lifetime for 2. So whether you fancy a cruise or an escorted tour, you'll have over 30 worldwide destinations to choose from.
For another chance to win, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus 1 standard network rate message. Or text BONUS to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus 1 standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB19, PO Box 8690, Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 27th of February. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Do you trust what you're being told? Good, because neither do I.
Those are just facts.
I'm Alex Armstrong, and on my show, we'll expose the spin.
Well, I want to answer that, because you didn't let me last time, because you always speak over me.
The broken promises.
To deny that is denying the truth.
And the hypocrisy.
Allow.
Stop.
You think we can allow?
Politics, policy, parliament. Nothing is off limits. No sugarcoating, no fear of offence, just the truth laid bare. Tune in every Saturday and Sunday at 9 p.m. for Alex Armstrong Tonight, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Britain deserves a newsroom that puts the facts and your voice first.
Well, and that's what you get on GB News. Lively debates, lively conversation.
And we're not afraid to hold power to account.
And each other. So join me, Andrew Pierce.
And me, Miriam Cates, for Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 on GB News.
It's chaos in Westminster, and hello, good evening to you and welcome to Farage. You'll be tonight your host, Martin Dorby. Coming up on tonight's chaotic show.
The distraction needs to end and the leadership in Downing Street has to change.
Mac disaster. The Prime Minister is on the brink as the Scottish Labour leader early today, Anna Sewell, delivers a shattering blow to Keir Starmer, calling on the PM to go as yet another key number 10 aide quits. But Keir Starmer's allies have been defiant, vowing the Prime Minister will once again cling on to power.
David Lammy, is it time for the PM to go?
She's waited 14 years to get here. No.
Yes, that's David Lammy, waiting 14 years to get here in his chauffeur-driven Land Rover. And within the last hour, the Prime Minister has been conducting a make-or-break crunch meeting with his increasingly mutinous backbencher MPs. And meanwhile, the Reform UK leader Nigel Farage today censors blurred and has put his party on general election footing.
I do today put this party on a general election war footing.
But how seriously can we take him when just last week Nigel Farage admitted his party was only half ready for government? And also on the show this evening, the King has spectacularly thrown his brother, the former Prince Andrew, under the bus today by agreeing to back any police investigation into the shamed former royal. And in other news, a small but growing group of people are refusing to pay their council tax in protest of what they call the undemocratic cancellation of local elections in May. I'll be speaking to one of those defiant voters later on in tonight's show. As we speak, the Parliamentary Labour Party is locked in a room with Sir Keir Starmer in the Commons. Our man Chris Hobus will be there for you with his GBNews pint glass pressed against the door. And when they pile out, he'll be grabbing them one by one. Can Keir Starmer survive this latest scandal, this latest chaos in the Labour Party? All of that to come on tonight's show. But first, it's time for your headlines, and here's Sam Francis.
Very good evening to you. Just after 7 o'clock. Well, the top story tonight, pressure on Sir Keir Starmer is intensifying after the leader of Scottish Labour called on him to resign amid continuing fallout over the Lord Mandelson affair. At a press conference in Glasgow, Anna Sewell said the Prime Minister should step aside and said the situation in Downing Street had become a distraction and that leadership needs to change.
The situation in Downing Street is not good enough. There have been too many mistakes. They promised they were going to be different, but too much has happened. Have there been good things? Of course there have, many of them, but no one knows them and no one can hear them because they're being drowned out. That's why it cannot continue.
Well, Downing Street has rejected that demand, insisting Sir Keir will not step aside, saying he has a clear 5-year mandate from the British people to deliver change. Senior cabinet figures have also rallied behind him today, including former Deputy Prime Minister Angela Rayner. She posted Sir Keir Starmer has her full support and urged Labour MPs to come together as a team. Alongside her, Chancellor Rachel Reeves, who said, with Keir as our Prime Minister, we are turning the country around. Meanwhile, Defence Secretary John Healey also said the public expects ministers to get on with the job. And speaking earlier, Labour's Deputy Leader, Lucy Powell, said the Prime Minister would endure the pressure.
What people should understand about Keir is that he withstands pressure really well. In fact, he sort of thrives off pressure, and he wants people to understand that he is so sorry about what happened with Peter Mandelson, sorry to the victims. It was a mistake, and he's said that and he's apologised for it, but he also wants to show people that he gets it and he understands the changes that need to follow from that, and so that people see that we understand it.
Well, one of the ministers publicly backing Sir Keir Starmer is the Health Secretary, Wes Streeting, and he has tonight published private WhatsApp messages with Peter Mandelson after the former peer's links to Jeffrey Epstein have sparked this ongoing political crisis. In those exchanges, Mr Streeting warned that he could be toast at the next election, criticised the government's lack of growth strategy and also questioned Number 10's communications operation. He says he is now releasing those messages to show he has nothing to hide and insists he had no role in Mandelson's appointment as US ambassador. And a recap on the breaking royal news we brought you in the last hour or so. Buckingham Palace saying it stands ready to support Thames Valley Police as it assesses allegations against Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor. The force is currently reviewing claims that the former Duke shared confidential documents with Jeffrey Epstein while serving as the UK's trade envoy. In a statement, the palace said King Charles has made profound concern clear through unprecedented actions, but stressed that specific allegations are for Mr Mountbatten-Windsor to address for himself. The palace went on to add that the King and Queen's thoughts remain firmly with the victims of abuse. And it is worth noting that Andrew has consistently denied any wrongdoing. Well, that comes as Prince William has arrived in Saudi Arabia today for his first high-profile visit to the kingdom, landing in Riyadh amid growing scrutiny over the royal family over the Epstein files. Ahead of the trip, the Prince and Princess of Wales also spoke out, saying they are deeply concerned too by the continuing revelations linked to Jeffrey Epstein, and adding that their thoughts also remain firmly with the victims. The Foreign Secretary has called for the release of Jimmy Lai on humanitarian grounds today after the British pro-democracy campaigner was sentenced to 20 years in jail by a Hong Kong court. The 78-year-old journalist was convicted of conspiring to collude with foreign forces and publishing seditious material, charges he has always denied. He's been detained since 2020. Well, Yvette Cooper has described the sentence as tantamount to life sentence, saying the UK will continue to press Hong Kong authorities for his release. And a nursery worker here at home has been described in court, every parent's worst nightmare, and has been found guilty today of sexually abusing children in his care at a nursery school in Bristol. 30-year-old Nathan Bennett from Bath was convicted of 8 charges, including rape and sexual assault relating to 5 boys, aged just 2 and 3. The court heard concerns were raised by parents and staff last February before CCTV showed Bennett abusing a child. He was immediately sent home, arrested, and the nursery later closed. Bennett had already admitted 13 further offences and has now been remanded in custody. Those are the latest headlines. I'll be back with you in around an hour's time. Now, though, it's over to Martin.
Tune in to GB News Radio wherever you are. Online, on DAB digital radio, on TuneIn, on Radio Player, on Nation Player, and on your smart speaker. Just say, play GB News.
Thank you, Sam, and welcome back to Farage Tonight with me, your host, Martin Aubrey. Now, what a day it's been in British politics, beginning with the resignation of yet another key Number 10 aide, fresh off the heels of Sir Keir Starmer's closest ally and Chief of Staff, Morgan McSweeney, being thrown off the top deck of the Labour Party bus yesterday. And then this shattering blow this afternoon from the leader of Scottish Labour.
I have a genuine friendship with Keir Starmer. The distraction needs to end, and the leadership in Downing Street has to change.
Well, that's what a close friend of Keir Starmer does. I would not want to meet his enemies down a darkened alley. But the Prime Minister's allies were defiant.
David Lammy, is it time for the PM to go?
She's waited 14 years to get here. No.
David Lammy waiting 14 years to get here in his chauffeur-driven Range Rover. And within an hour, all Cabinet members have come out in support of forced Keir Starmer to cling onto power for who knows how long. But don't we all know there is nothing worse than politicians saying they have full confidence in someone?
Does he have the same full confidence in Morgan McSweeney that he had in Peter Mandelson?
Prime Minister. McSweeney is an essential part of my team. He helped me change the Labour Party and win an election. Of course I have confidence in him.
And don't forget, that's the same vote of confidence that Angela Rayner got before she also was thrown off the top deck of the Labour Party bus. The vote of confidence from Sir Keir Starmer seems to be something like the political kiss of death. And within the last hour, the Prime Minister has been conducting a make-or-break meeting with his increasingly resentful and rebellious backbenchers. And that being said, it seems all but inevitable now that the Prime Minister will eventually fall through the Downing Street trapdoor into political oblivion. But the question at the heart of this is this: how much longer can the pain be prolonged for both the Labour Party and indeed for the entire country? Well, join me now is the former Downing Street Director of Communications, James Lyons. James, welcome to the show. It's a pleasure to have your company. So Tim Allen went through that trapdoor today, the fourth Director of Communications. You also had that role. May I ask you, why did you depart that pasture?
Well, I was brought in to do some very specific things around changing the way that comms were coordinated and commissioned across Whitehall. And that was always intended as a year or so's work. And that's what I ended up doing. But you're right, it is an extraordinary 24, 36 hours for the Prime Minister. We've seen Morgan McSweeney go yesterday. Obviously, Tim Allen went this morning. And then we've heard from Anas Sarwar this afternoon. Now, Westminster has been awash with gossip about a Macbeth mutiny involving Scottish politicians who are worried about the Scottish Parliament elections that are coming down the track in May. But nobody, I think, expected Anas Sarwar to wield the knife himself. I have to say, though, this evening it does rather look like he's done a James Purnell.
Yeah, so he basically went up the ladder expecting everyone to follow him. Instead, Anas Sarwar found himself alone in no man's land, isolated.
And if you recall, under the last Labour government, James Purnell was the cabinet minister who quit as the polls closed on the local elections in the expectation that colleagues would follow him over the top. But in the end, he was just left high and dry.
James Lyons, we have to look at the body count so far, as well as 4 directors of communication, 2 chiefs of staff, 11 ministers, including, of course, the Deputy Prime Minister, who, ironically, fancies herself as being the next Prime Minister. 40,000 reasons why perhaps that shouldn't happen.
He's just correct. He's had 3 chiefs of staff, one of whom had 2 goes at it. But look, actually, if you look back at chiefs of staff and directors of communications since Brexit, the kind of longevity of these roles has been something akin to Second World War fighter pilots.
With that in mind, perhaps it's time to ask the question. Rather than kind of sacking the underlings, throwing them off the top deck of the bus, perhaps it's the General himself who's the problem. Perhaps the problem is the Prime Minister. Perhaps it's him that should be shot down like a pilot.
Well, I think we've tried switching leaders, Prime Ministers, several times under the Conservatives, and it's not immediately obvious to me that that has improved the way that Britain is governed or the outcomes that government delivers. One of the things that Keir Starmer and the Labour Party were elected to do 18 months or so ago was to try to end this chaos and end the revolving door, the revolving black door that we see there in front of us now. So I think, the Prime Minister will be determined to try and stick it out.
Okay, James Lyons, we're hearing that the meeting with the Parliamentary Labour Party may be wrapping up so shortly. Our man Chris Hope will be grabbing people as they come out of that meeting. But James Lyons, what are you expecting? We have a party heading for electoral disaster, going off the edge of a cliff, fatter than the bobsleigh team for Team GB at the Winter Olympics.
Well, look, I think midterm elections are always difficult for parties, and the Labour Party isn't the only party that is struggling in the polls at the moment. I wouldn't expect I would expect there to be quite a show of unity, actually, for the Prime Minister at the Parliamentary Labour Party tonight. That's certainly been the case from what Cabinet Ministers, including Wes Streeting, who's obviously tipped for a tilt at the top job, have been saying. And in fact, those who don't need to come out and say this at this time. So Angela Rayner, another leadership contender who's come out and backed the Prime Minister, at least for now. Likewise, Lucy Powell, who was sacked in that Cabinet reshuffle in September, but went on to be elected deputy leader. And you've just obviously had her on the programme saying that she thinks the Prime Minister should be given more time.
OK, thank you very much for joining us on the show tonight. I appreciate your time. James Lyons, former Downing Street's Director of Communications, appreciates your time on the show this evening. Well, it's Monday evening. I'm joined, of course, by GB News' senior political commentator, Nigel Nelson. Nigel, welcome to the show. As ever, we're just hearing there that our man Chopper is trying to grab as many Labour parliamentarians as he can when they come out. I'm just hearing from Chris Oak, there is a large number of people coming out. We're going to get to them anytime soon. But ahead of that, let's be honest, this constant throwing of bodies off the top deck of the Labour Party bus is starting to be farcical. Let's face the music. It's not chiefs of staff. It's not directors of communication. It's not Morgan McSweeney. The problem is Sir Keir Starmer.
Well, that's exactly what Anna Sawar was saying today. But it turns out that was actually a desperate move. He'll probably fall flat on his face because of it. His problem was that the general election, it looked like he was going to be the next First Minister of Scotland. Labour were running over 35% in the polls. They were doing really well. And they've dipped hugely to less than half that now, which is why he thinks that by calling for Keir Starmer to go, that he would A, get the credit if he did go, and B, at least he's made the call which might get a few voters back on side. They've lost about 2/3 of Labour voters up in Scotland. And so at the moment they're in third place, with Reform second and the SNP first.
Now, Chris O'Baman Chopper there has just sent me this message. He's saying there is now a large crowd of 100 journalists outside the Parliamentary Labour Party meeting. Labour MPs are still asking the Prime Minister questions inside the committee room. Sir Keir Starmer is in a bind, he says. He can hardly leave and say he is busy and has a country to run without making them very, very cross. So for now, our man Chris Obe is still waiting outside that meeting room for the parliamentarians to emerge. But all of this, Nigel Nelson, just paints a continual picture of bedlam, of chaos, the precise thing that Sir Keir Starmer said they would end. Turn the page on 14 years of chaos from the Conservatives. Turn the page on the unrest. Instead, it's got much worse. They promised change. They certainly have changed things. The country is going down the toilet.
Well, I mean, I'm not underestimating the perilous position that Keir Starmer is in at the moment, that quite clearly he's in huge danger of being toppled. The question would be when. I think that probably he won't be in the foreseeable future simply because of inertia on the part of the Labour Party. If this had been the Tories, he'd probably be gone now. But because it's the Labour Party, it takes them a while to get around to it. So I reckon it'll be May when he faces the real danger.
OK, well, let's get straight now to Westminster Hall because that meeting has just expired. I'm delighted now to be joined by the Labour Party MP, Catherine Atkinson, fresh out of that PLP meeting. Catherine, you spoke to Michelle Durbey before that meeting. You're about to go inside. Tell us what happened. What's the mood on the ground there?
Well, you will know that the Parliamentary Labour Party meetings that happen every week, we're not supposed to talk about what was said, but what all of those journalists that are stood outside that you mentioned, what all of them will have seen is an absolutely packed room, so packed that they stopped letting people in. And what they will have heard was the resounding sound of hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of Labour parliamentarians united in support of our Prime Minister.
Aren't you united in support? Because if you aren't, then you may have to face the electorate. You may have a leader coming in who's going to tack to the left, which the electorate never voted for. And if you face the music, you'd be obliterated.
I think that all of us were elected 18 months ago in order to deliver change for the country. And it is absolutely essential that that is the focus. And it's the stability that we have seen with this Prime Minister that has meant we've been able to bring inflation down. We've been able to see 6 interest rate cuts, which means that people's mortgages are a little easier. It means that we've been able to freeze not only things like prescription charges and train fares in order to try and tackle the cost of living, but we've also been able to lift 500,000 children out of poverty. We need to continue to deliver change because that is what people want to see.
Catherine, there has been a lot of change You've changed Chief of Staff 3 times. You've changed Director of Communication 4 times. 11 ministers have changed, including the Deputy Prime Minister. The Corruption Minister has been changed over allegations of corruption. The Homeless Minister has been changed because they're a dodgy landlord. The Transport Minister all changed because of a fraud charge. This is a government defined by the precise chaos that you said you'd turn the page on.
I think today we have seen statements of support from all of the Cabinet, and the overwhelming majority of Labour MPs reject the Conservative chaos that we saw. That is why it's absolutely essential that we see that focus on delivery. That is the change that people need to see, and it is certainly not in this country's interest to see further changes of leader as we saw under the Conservatives. It's not good for the economy, it's not good for our international reputation, and it's certainly not the stability that people are crying out for. I think that Keir Starmer has been able to turn the tables, and the tarnished international reputation that we saw after Boris Johnson and Liz Truss. We need that leadership, not just for our country, but on the international stage where we know that things are so uncertain. And I'm really pleased that we are seeing those waiting lists coming down, seeing that focus on the cost of living, and seeing that economic stability so that we're in a position to ensure that people are better off.
Catherine, I respect and admire your loyalty towing the party line here, but when your head hits that pillow at night, you must know that we have the least popular Prime Minister in history. Popularity polls going downhill faster than the British bobsleigh team. Come on, people don't buy this anymore. You promised an end to the chaos. We've got more chaos.
What matters to me is the changes. Is what matters to me. That is what I'm thinking about when my head hits that pillow. They want to see more neighbourhood police. That is what they are seeing. They want to see regeneration in our city. That is what they are seeing. They want to know that when they need to see a doctor, that they can. There is still a long way to go, but what my focus is ensuring that we are taking steps in the right direction. That is what is essential.
So for now, Sir Keir Starmer remains our Prime Minister, but for how long? I mean, the bookies have shortened the odds on his departure, and it seems to be the May elections could be the pinch point, could be carnage.
Well, I think it certainly keeps journalists interested when they think that there are going to be stories like that. But that is just not, in my view, the focus of this government. Just last week, we saw millions being dedicated to children who have cancer to ensure that they can get to medical appointments. We saw thousands more schools who are rolling out breakfast clubs. And we saw the lifting of 500,000 children out of poverty. It is those kinds of changes that we need to continue to see so that people feel the delivery that has been so fought for.
OK, Catherine, thank you for speaking to us tonight on GB News. I appreciate your time, and sleep tight tonight. Thank you very, very much indeed. Now, in a moment's time, the Reform UK leader, Nigel Farage, he senses blood and has put his party on a general election footing.
I do today put this party on a general election war footing.
But just how seriously can we take Nigel Farage? When just last week, Mr Farage admitted his party was only half ready for government. That's next.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
every Sunday from 11. Join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
First up, we've got Traitors. So probably now the biggest TV show in the country, and obviously a global hit as well. We've just been announced it's going to be a stage show coming sometime early next year, we think. And it's got huge prestige behind it. So Sam Mendes, who's major Hollywood director, Bond films, 1917, that incredible film, his company is behind it with All3 Media, which is the Dutch production company that originally created the Traitors concept. So a lot of backing behind it. We don't know which way it's going to swing yet, but the people that are, for example, director Robert Hastie, two of my favourite shows we were just talking about, Standing at the Sky's Edge, which is a very serious, dark show, and then Operation Mincemeat, which is an absolute lark silliness.
I have to say, my favourite show in the world, I've seen it 10 times.
Which one?
Mincemeat.
Oh, have you?
Yes, on Broadway and the West End.
Oh,
I'm
wonderful.
Absolutely obsessed by it.
Yeah, it's incredible. So the talent behind all of this is really exciting. Whether we're going to have sort of jazz hands and key changes, I don't know. No cast yet. I would love to see Claudia actually breaking some moves, but I don't think we'll get anyone like that in it.
It could be a bit of a comedy, is what you're suggesting.
I think it's going to be veering towards the lighter side of it, highly entertaining. And they've promised, we keep getting twists every season. The one thing they have said is they will be following the format, but there will be surprises. So this one we're very much looking forward to. More news to come if you meet me up in the tower later.
Interesting. What else do you have for us?
So the next up we've got HMS Pinafore, which is glorious. And there's a lot of people that feel that Gilbert and Sullivan can be a little bit stuffy, perhaps a little bit old-fashioned.
GB News, the People's Channel.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
So he can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
On another quiet day in Westminster, welcome back to Farage with me, your host tonight, Martin Daubney. Now, we are continuing our coverage of an astonishing day in Westminster, and earlier on this afternoon, Reform UK leader Nigel Farage announced he was putting his party on a general election war footing and suggested it is only a matter of time before Sir Keir Starmer is forced to step down. Well, I'm delighted now to be joined in the studio by the Reform UK MP for East Wiltshire, Danny Kruger, who joins us. Danny Kruger, welcome to the show. It's a pleasure to have your company. You've hot-footed it back from Birmingham there, I see, Mr. Kruger. Let me start, if I could, with the topic du jour, as it were, and that is the seemingly spiralling demise of Sir Keir Starmer. Do you think he should go?
Well, I think it's now inevitable. The Prime Minister depends for his authority on his own party, and that's now shot to pieces. There may be a stay of execution while his rivals for the Crown organise themselves, but it's clearly now a matter of when, not if, Keir Starmer goes.
But I guess you've got to be careful what you wish for, Danny Kruger. On the one hand, the party could tack to the left. What would that do for the country if we had somebody like Angela Rayner as the Prime Minister?
Well, I'm afraid that is more likely than not. Not necessarily Angela Rayner, but whoever wins will only do so by appealing to the left of the Labour Party and indeed to their membership. So I think the country is in for a rocky ride now, and I'm very concerned about what the reaction of the markets and indeed of ordinary people in the UK will be. I mean, Nigel today at the rally we had in Birmingham was really stressing the economic situation we're in, and so not just many rich people emigrating or sending their money abroad, but lots of talented young people just voting with their feet and thinking that they need to get out. And I think that will accelerate if a new Labour leader comes in. So it's bad as it is now. It is going to get worse.
What do you say to those people who put the wider assumption out there, and that is are just sick to the back teeth now of political parties. And that includes the former party of yourself, the Conservatives, who just simply don't seem to listen to the electorate. They seem to believe that politicians know better. And we have a situation now where the British electorate are just looking at politics as broken, pointless, redundant.
I think that's right. I mean, we in our party say that Britain is broken. We don't think it's irretrievably broken. What's fundamentally broken is our politics. The state is failing, and you see that in the two main parties and all these leadership dramas, which people rightly get so exasperated by because it's politicians focusing on themselves, not the country. That's because they don't know what they're doing, they don't know where they're going, they don't have a governing idea. The great contrast with the reform is we know what we want to do, and it's no surprise that we have no questions about leadership. I mean, there's clear leadership in our party. Everybody knows who the boss is. He's been saying the same thing for 20 years, been proved right. So you need a vision and you need leadership and you need a plan. And those are the things that, you see Starmer didn't have it. He came into government with no plan. It all fell apart very fast. That's what happened to the Tories. We've got to be different.
Danny Kruger, when we look back, it seems now inevitable that the days of the Prime Minister are dwindling. When we look back on Starmerism, how do you think it will be remembered or defined?
For me, the great clue to Keir Starmer is the detail revealed in one of the biographies of him, which is that he got into politics because he was inspired by the Human Rights Act. So he was a lawyer, obviously a human rights lawyer. When Tony Blair passed the Human Rights Act in 1998, Starmer thought, this is marvellous. This is how we should do politics in our country. We should outsource decision-making to the courts of international law, and I want to be part of that. I want to help make these kind of laws. So he came into politics to do that. That's what he's been doing, and we've seen it in its most disgraceful form in the pursuit of our veterans through the courts, in the handover of the Chagos Islands, the way that his refusal to stop the boats by doing the obvious thing of leaving the European Convention on Human Rights. He defers to international human rights law over Parliament and indeed over the British people. I'm afraid that's what governs that's his ideology, and it's totally disastrous in a Prime Minister.
OK, well, thanks for joining us on tonight's show. I'm Farage. That's Reform UK MP for East Wiltshire, Danny Kruger. Thank you for your time. Let's get back to the studio now. I'm delighted to be joined in the studio by the former Conservative MP, Daniel Kudzinski. Daniel, you were listening in with bated breath there at your former colleague, Danny Kruger. What's your take on the fact that the Conservatives are a busted flush? Keir Starmer's days are numbered. Only Reform UK can save Britain?
No, I don't think the Conservatives are a busted flush. Kemi Badenoch is increasingly performing effectively at the dispatch box, and I think she's going to take the Conservative Party to new levels during this Parliament. But what I would say is I remember very well the 1922 committee, days before Boris Johnson was brought down. And I think I was one of 3 Conservative MPs who spoke out in his defence. It was a febrile atmosphere. It was like the assassination of Caligula. A couple of people put the knife in, but everybody wants to be seen to be putting the knife in. We removed that leader, and it led to the most appalling outcome for the Conservative Party, with then 2 subsequent leaders, and then disaster at the general election. So I was speaking to a very senior Labour peer today, and I was giving her that message, and she said, no, it's too late, he's gone. But what I would say is, removing a Prime Minister is a very, very serious issue, and there could be horrendous consequences, not only for the Labour Parliamentary Party, but for the country. And as Danny Kruger has said, we could have an even more left-wing Prime Minister. We've already started to see, as Danny Kruger has said, the damage to the economy of all of our entrepreneurs and wealth creators leaving this country as a result of the massive increases in taxation on businesses. If we get an even more left-wing Labour Prime Minister, then the consequences for borrowing and for our productivity levels and our competitiveness could be even more severe.
Daniel, what do you say to those people who are listening and watching tonight who say, if the Labour leader taxed that far to the left, nobody voted for that, there wasn't a mandate for a socialist government, therefore they should be put to the public, they should go to a general election?
Well, I have every sympathy with that, but it would be a very strange that a Labour Party with a majority of over 150 would sacrifice another 3 years in office in order to allow the British people to make a decision. But one thing I would like to say is that we all have toxic figures in all political parties. Lord Mandelson, I mean, for me, having relayed private government confidential matters to a foreigner, which could be so damaging for the United Kingdom, I think is unforgivable. And when you go into politics, and I speak as somebody who was a foreigner to this country when I came from Poland, I think for me, as an outsider coming into the House of Commons, I think loyalty to Britain and to the British state is something that every member of Parliament should put at the very top of their agenda. And so I think Sir Keir Starmer's position is difficult because he appointed somebody who so clearly, evidently, has betrayed the interests of his nation.
OK, Daniel, thank you very much for joining us tonight in the studio. I appreciate your time. Now, don't go anywhere, because next we will be going live to Westminster Hall to our political editor, Chris Hope, who has just left the meeting of the Labour backbenchers. What did he make of Sir Keir Starmer's performance? That's next. Don't go anywhere.
Can't wait to get in that sea.
Lovely and warm.
Just like the feeling of having great travel insurance.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
If you think it's been wet in the UK of late, then do spare a thought for Portugal and Spain. Here we've got further very heavy rain on the way on Tuesday, particularly for Portugal, where flooding is a real concern. It will also turn very windy once again for a time. The Central Med, though, seeing the driest conditions with a few brighter interludes for parts of Italy. The Balkans, though, Greece and Turkey will stay fairly unsettled and changeable with showers or longer spells of rain, perhaps even some thunderstorms for Santorini by the end of the week. Sunniest for Tenerife.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Hello and welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. It remains grey and gloomy for many of us during the next 24 hours. Prolonged rain for some, showery rain for others. Very little respite from this persistently damp weather pattern that we found ourselves in since the start of the year. Low pressure sitting once again to the southwest, sending wet and windy weather through. The initial band of rain that we've seen in the southwest earlier in the day, all that fizzles away to showery rain across central parts overnight. Drier towards eastern England, northwest Scotland, in between further spells of rain. Extensive low clouds, mist and fog in places as we begin on Tuesday, but actually frost-free. A relatively mild start to the day, if rather gloomy. Now, at first, there will be some dry weather, even some brightness towards central southern England and the southwest, but that's only ahead of the next weather front that's moving in by this stage across western parts of Cornwall. Showery rain ahead of that across much of England and Wales. More persistent damp weather eastern parts of Northern Ireland into central and southern Scotland. And this wet weather across eastern Scotland, well, it's going to be remaining in place throughout Tuesday, Wednesday, and indeed the first part of Thursday. So rain warning in force for eastern Scotland. That rain adding to what has already been a very wet few weeks across the east of Scotland. Snow on the highest peaks, but rain at most other levels and elsewhere across the UK. Further cloud and spells of rain. One band of rain swiftly moves through, followed by some lively showers into the southwest. Wednesday's a right dog's dinner, a lot of cloud cover across the UK. Spells of rain in many places, particularly northern areas, and the snow on the highest peaks begins to lower, so above 300 or 400 metres we'll see snow across eastern Scotland. And that's the mark of things to come, with the weather turning colder on Thursday and Friday.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world. Am I allowed to talk now? No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up?
About 10. So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's Political Podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's Political Podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
Chaos in Westminster, and welcome back to Farage with me, Martin Dordley, on what has been a truly astonishing day in British politics. Let's get now straight to Westminster Hall for the latest and join our man, GBNews political editor, Chris Hope. Chris, I believe the meeting has just terminated. Has the Prime Minister's career been terminated?
No, he's still there. Of course, you know, the Cabinet back him, and it seems broadly so do most of the members of the Parliamentary Labour Party. 44 questions tabled at the PM. We should think around 40 were positive, 4 weren't. I mean, that's if you look at the numbers there, that's 1 in 10 of the PLP asked the PM a question. It was twice as long as normal. The PM arrived, you know, with a fixed jaw, didn't answer any of the questions we were saying to him. He said in the meeting to MPs there, I have not been open or inclusive enough with the people in this room, and that's probably why he kept answering questions, because he knows he's now got to win back the Parliamentary Labour Party. Those are the people, frankly, who will decide his future. At the end he said, as long as I've got a breath in my body, I will fight for the people who he wants to serve, people who are overlooked, the people who haven't got a voice in this country. Passionate responses from MPs, at least one of them used an expletive and said we have to blank get on with it. I think there's a frustration, as witnessed by David Lammy in Downing Street about 4 hours ago to GB News when I asked him. He says we can't risk blowing all this up to GB News then. With after 14 years of waiting to be in power, we can't blow it all up after 18 months, and that's I think where it is. So the PM survived. He survived to fight another day. While he was in that meeting, of course, Wes Streeting's messages to Peter Mandelson were published. They are difficult. We don't know whether Number 10 approved of that or not. And also there's been some briefing about whether Wes Streeting was being blamed for what happened with Anna Sarwar in Scotland. Again, we're trying to get lines out of Number 10 off of that. So the catcalling between different factions in the party carries on, but the PM has won the day at the PLP. He lives to fight another day, Martin.
Merely postponing the inevitable. I mean, there's a higher body count than a Schwarzenegger movie. 3 chiefs of staff, 4 directors of communication, 11 ministers and counting, including one of them, the Deputy Prime Minister Angela Rayner, who might fancy a tilt out of leadership, still on that probe over a tax scandal. They promised change. They promised to turn the page on chaos. Chris Hope, it's a picture of eternal chaos. They can put on the Richter screen, but the electorate, they're fed up with it all, mate.
It is extraordinary. They've got a majority of 160. That should be enough for any powerful Prime Minister to simply squash like ants anyone who speaks out against them. But they seem to be captivated and controlled by this, by the backbenchers. I don't know why this party can't just grip it. That's a challenge, of course, for the next Chief of Staff. We don't know who that will be yet. There are 2 acting Chiefs of Staff who stepped up to replace Morgan McSweeney. No Director of Communications. These are backroom jobs. But this meeting was all about trying to convince his own MPs that he's got what he needs to try and take his party into the next election. When I interviewed the Prime Minister at the G20 in South Africa, the G20 meeting in November, he said he wanted to win a second term. That's rule or be in charge of this country as Prime Minister for 10 years. I mean, that looks a long way off right now, despite that successful meeting. The hard work starts here. How will he bring those MPs with him? How will he ensure that they don't rebel and cause him problems? We'll wait and see.
OK, thank you very much, Chris Hope, for your hard day's work. As ever, you've been super. Best of the business, Chris Hope. Thank you very, very much. Rubbernecking for an MP going past, always working. Chris Hope. Nigel Nelson, on a serious point, they're putting on a brave face. The polling paints a different picture. The party can be united. The country isn't. And there's a feeling, no matter what the Labour Party say, the correct man to lead this country is not Sir Keir Starmer.
problem is that no one can actually agree on who the correct person to lead the country is. And that's why I think that a lot of what is happening now is down to Labour inertia. You're talking about May elections. If Labour had a sudden leadership election, that would take weeks, and it would be weeks of infighting. And I think that Daniel earlier made a very good case of why you keep Keir Starmer. You would actually cause more chaos by trying to remove him.
So it's just the least of the worst option, the best of a set of bad options, and just trundle on until we go off the edge of a cliff.
Well, I mean, the whole problem is you haven't got a successor. So there's no one that MPs, even if they want to get rid of Keir Starmer, and I think Anwar Sawar, in fact, united the party rather than split it by doing what he did today. But even if they wanted to get rid of him, they've got to choose who that person is. There is no consensus on that, and until that happens, Keir Starmer remains in post.
Thank you very much, Nigel Nelson. Now, coming up after the break, Buckingham Palace has confirmed in this past hour that it will support any police investigation into the Andrew Mountbatten Windsor scandal around Jeffrey Epstein. That's next.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Decisions made in Washington aren't just shaping America, they're shaping Britain too. From migration to global security, from crime to health. Whatever happens in the White House today
will be felt in your town or city tomorrow.
That's why The Late Show is live from Washington, D.C.
Cutting through the politics to show you what it all means for Britain.
The Late Show live every night at midnight.
Only on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Bold. They are under no illusion. Ray.
Are you a human trafficker?
Boundless. I've had enough of the nonsense, and I'm not afraid to say it.
Don't get this on the BBC.
Every weeknight, I tear through the headlines.
The smell of gasoline.
Should we be worried about it? From Westminster madness to cultural war chaos.
What I'm going to do now, they are throwing things out the car as we speak.
Get ready, Britain. Here we go. Patrick Christie's tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
no,
isn't it?
Because
the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
No matter the state it's in, this is our nation. Join me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, for a genuine, honest discussion on where we have been, where we are going, and where we are with the people who set the direction. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News.
Britain deserves a newsroom that puts the facts and your voice first.
Well, and that's what you get on GB News. Lively debates, lively conversation.
And we're not afraid to hold power to account.
And each other. So join me, Andrew Pierce.
And me, Miriam Gates, for Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 on GB News.
Welcome back to Farage now. Buckingham Palace says it stands ready to support Thames Valley Police as it assesses the allegations against Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, a palace spokesperson has said. The King has made clear in words and through unprecedented actions his profound concern and allegations which continue to come to light in respect of Mr Mountbatten Windsor's conduct. And while the specific claims in question are for Mr Mountbatten Windsor to address, if we are approached by Thames Valley Police, we stand ready to support them, as you would expect. That's an astonishing breakthrough. And joining me now to discuss this and what all this means is the former head of the Royal Protection, Di Davis. Mr Davis, welcome to the show. Breaking news line in these past few moments, and clearly here we have the palace throwing its weight behind the police investigation. Yet another shameful moment for the former Prince Andrew.
Well, I agree, and I'm delighted at long last that the King and other members of the royal family are now supporting the police. But I would ask, where have they been for the last 15 years? Since poor Virginia Giuffre made her allegations, that was in 2015, but these incidents and allegations go back to before 2010. This is the first that we've really heard from any member of the royal family of any note that they are concerned to this level. I appreciate the King has done what he has, but many would say he was reacting. He's been reacting. The overwhelming evidence that's now coming out as to the behaviour of his brother, I mean, it is beggars belief. This is a man who we've protected since he was born. I would estimate we've spent about 120 to 130 million pounds protecting him and his family in one shape or another. And this is how allegedly he thanks us, or did thank us, by giving trade information, confidential information, and possibly secret information to this paedophile. I just think it beggars belief.
Di Davis, just to interject, it is the palace that backs the police, not the King. This is the palace directly. Just to make that clear point, King, of course, doesn't like to get involved in such shabby matters unless he absolutely has to be. You're absolutely right. So from your point of view then, despite the fact that there's been this clear severance, are you thinking now this is simply too little too late?
I am. And I've said on a number of occasions, on a number of programmes, this is a boil. This is a boil that people have tried to lance, but they're failing. More and more information is coming out, and there needs to be an inquiry into the conduct of the Metropolitan Police, why they aren't investigating him, why they aren't investigating officials at the palace who must have known, those who travelled with him for years and years, stayed in the paedophiles' palaces, residence, all over the world. They must have seen things. You couldn't possibly stay in any of his locations without knowing the kind of issues that were going on.
Di Davis, may I ask you one pertinent question? Do you think it's time for Mr Mountbatten Windsor to face a jury either here or in the United States?
I support that everyone is innocent, but I also support that unless you investigate crimes or alleged crimes, you won't find the evidence. And I've said that numerous times. What I'm saying is, like any other suspect, and he is a suspect, it's alleged, he should be cautioned and then he should be interviewed. The last scenario that we all talked about was when allegedly he made and asked officials to help him find the dirt on Virginia Giuffre. There was clear evidence of collusion. There was clear evidence of conspiracy. And yet the Met, in their wisdom, they may have good reasons, they didn't investigate.
Di Davis, I have to end it there. Thanks for your time. We have to get back straight now to Westminster Hall for the latest. GBNews presenter Chris Hope, I believe you have a cabinet minister fresh from that meeting. Chris, over to you.
Yeah, Martin, with me now is Emma Reynolds, who's the Environment Secretary. Emma Reynolds, you tweeted your support for the PM. Were you told to do so?
Oh, well, the whole cabinet supports the Prime Minister, and I've been in conversation with him at the weekend and indeed last week. We have a united front here, and the meeting of the Parliamentary Labour Party, which I've just come from, there was a real sense of unity in that room behind Keir Starmer, because we need this Labour government to face outwards, not inwards, not having fights with ourselves, but actually focusing on delivering the change that we have a 5-year mandate to do.
So is Anas Sarwar wrong? He said, of course, the PM should move on and someone else should replace him.
I think he is wrong, and I respectfully disagree with him. And I think what I saw tonight in the packed room, Committee Room 14, where we meet every week, is the Prime Minister receiving several standing ovations, because he is somebody with great integrity who deeply cares about the future of this country, that wants to drive forward both domestically and on the international stage to ensure that we continue to make progress, to tackle the cost of living, to ensure that we stand tall on the world stage, we lift children out of poverty, and we continue to rebuild public services.
The mood changed during the meeting. It started, I think, awkwardly, and by the end it seems he won the room round. Is that right? I heard that from one MP.
I wouldn't agree with that analysis, because actually as he walked in there was already a standing ovation. The sense of unity in that room tonight was palpable, and I've never seen it in all the years I've been an MP quite so full either. And we had speakers from both the Commons but also the Lords, and people spoke very, very passionately about the purpose of this Labour government, about the moral mission of this Labour government in tackling people's problems, in ensuring that we have a system that works for people and an economy that delivers better living standards for people.
But you're losing chiefs of staff, director of communications. There's criticism from MPs about lack of strategy. Why has it gone wrong in 18 months?
Well, we have obviously made mistakes, but we're also making progress. And in terms of people leaving Downing Street, I think, you know, when people become the story, and we've seen this time and again in different governments, then they do have to go. But equally, what we saw tonight was a party that is united behind Keir Starmer, our leader, and frankly, a lot of anger about some in the party who are wanting us to fight amongst ourselves and turn inwards. But they are very much a very small minority.
What's your message then to people like maybe the supporters of Wes Streeting, who are saying he's being briefed against all the time for number 10?
Well, Wes Streeting is a full member of the government and is doing a great job as Health Secretary. I think he's a man of immense talent, and Wes and the whole Cabinet are working together to ensure that we deliver on the NHS, and Wes is doing a great job on that. We've seen NHS waiting times fall for the fastest rate in 15 years. We're seeing real progress there. So Wes is somebody that I admire greatly.
And just very finally, the PM will fight and fight the election in 2029?
Yes, he will.
Thank you, Emma Reynolds there. Emma Reynolds there with a determined message there from the Prime Minister meeting there with the PLP today.
Thank you very, very much, Chris. Now, up next to State of the Nation with Sir Jacob Rees-Mogg. Sir Jacob, you listening in intently. I wanted to get the feedback from you. There were loads of standing ovations, so the Prime Minister must be safe.
As there were for Ian Duncan-Smith just a few days before he went, and these meetings remind me of the meetings of the 1922 committee with Theresa May just before she went. The more you get cheered, the more people don't mean it. And who's coming out to defend her? The relatively junior cabinet ministers, not the senior ones. The senior ones are stepping back.
So is this a kind of Kim Jong-un style standing ovation? You must give a standing ovation, otherwise you might find yourself disappearing.
Well, ministers and whips will be giving a standing ovation because they're in trouble if they don't, and the whips will be noting down who isn't. These things are highly controlled. 40 out of 44 positive questions. They'd all have been planted beforehand. The 4 souls who asked difficult questions are quite brave. But that's not where the plotting takes place. It takes place on WhatsApp groups outside the meeting room, and that will be absolutely red hot this evening.
Sir Jacob Rees-Mogg, thank you very much. State of the Nation is up next with Sir Jacob. Don't go anywhere. That's next. I'll see you tomorrow at 3.
You could win cash and the ultimate holiday in our 2-part Great British Giveaway. Thanks to Riviera Travel, you could be jetting off on a £10,000 dream holiday for 2 people. With flights, transfers and luxury accommodation included, you'll get to choose the kind of holiday you want. Plus, we're going to give you £30,000 in tax-free cash.
For another chance to win, text WIN to 63225.